Well, hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and today is a unique day, probably the first of many times that I will have a outstanding guest back onto the show. Josh Mettle was the guinea pig of this show. He was episode one about 2 years ago, in fact, when I didn't have a recording studio and I didn't even know what the hell I was doing. I'm not sure that I know what the hell that I'm doing now, but I know that things have gotten a little bit better. And I knew it was time to ask Josh to come back and to be my guest on the show and to have a conversation. Normally what I do is kind of think through the questions I might want to ask, although I try to make this show unfold organically. But in this case, I just decided there's no need for me to prepare anything. I mean, Josh is a great teacher. He and I are dear friends. We do a lot of teaching together. And I just want to hang out with my friend and have a conversation. And I think that you'll find that what unfolds in this conversation organically is quite beautiful. We go to a lot of different places. You're going to hear some strategies on exactly how to be utilizing this important time to deepen relationships with realtors in light of the National Association of Realtors pending situation. You're going to hear a lot about the importance of really setting your day up for success and really working on your business instead of in it. And we're going to go into a lot of other places such as gratitude and other tactics as it relates to business that I think you're going to find to be incredibly helpful. Sit down, pour yourself a cup of coffee, go on a walk, take some notes, and get ready for a lot of great education. I don't know that I need to say much about Josh Mettle, but he is a $1.2 billion originator. He is a leader. He is a terrific teacher. And he is, I think, at the forefront of the NAR ruling right now. He's devoted a lot of his time to understanding it. He is a very successful real estate investor and therefore knows a lot about real estate, and somebody who I feel a lot of happiness for having created a tremendous amount of financial freedom for himself in the way that he has strategically gone about investing his and his family's money. Before we get to this conversation, I want to say thank you for listening. I want to say thank you for, if you are a subscriber, I'd like to thank you for being one. I'd like to thank you if you've ever introduced this show to anybody else. And if you haven't and you like this episode or any of the other episodes, please do. We're just looking to grow the subscriber base and continue to bring value to you twice a month in the 360 experience. So without further ado, my conversation with my good buddy, Josh Mettle. Well, hello there, man. Welcome back.
Glad to be here. This is going to be fun, my friend.
Always fun to talk with you. And, I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, first of all, if you go back to the very first episode of the 360 experience, you were the first guest. And so much has happened in our lives since then, including the fact that I had like super long hair and a really gray, straggly beard, and I was in a really lame setting. And we talked about a whole bunch of things that I think were meaningful. And yet at the same time, I know that there's so much more meaningful conversation that we can have now just with everything that's been going on in both of our lives. So welcome back. Thanks for being the first person to for me to have back on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure. We've been figuring it out the last year or two.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. For those that don't know what that means, I kind of infused this mantra into the Leadership 360 coaching program back about a year and a half ago, as the market was really starting to get tough, that the mantra is, hey, we're just figuring it out. And that's exactly what we've been doing for 18 months. And who knows how long this is going to last for, right? I mean, it's interesting because as tough as the market has been for the last 18 months, we've uncovered a lot of gold in that process, haven't we?
A ton. And, I was just talking to one of my LOs on my team today who got into this market in 2020 and has just seen about 30 years worth of experience in the last couple of years. He's seen the best of the best. And what I think, at least, in my career, the worst of the worst in terms of the duration of this pullback. And it seems like we're in for, at least we're experiencing right now, another wave. Like the waves just keep coming. So in terms of lessons, boy, if we haven't created a little bit of metal, a little bit of intestinal fortitude, I don't know what else, but it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities in this market right now, and it's been fun to play with you, on the faculty of Loan Atlas. It almost feels like a diminishing statement to say that you're a faculty member of the Loan Atlas. I mean, you're certainly one of the most important people that we have within our organization and bringing education to loan originators. And we've been, bantering a lot and trying to figure out, to your point, what do originators need right now? So let's just start off with that. Like, I mean, some people that are listening to this, I'm sure, have seen you do some presentations lately associated with the NAR issue. What are you learning in the origination business right now with you and your team as it relates to the realtor settlement that is, still pending, and I got a feeling this thing's going to get drug out for a while. By the way, I don't think that we're near the end of it yet.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, there's a lot right now that loan originators can be doing to be valuable to real estate agents.
For sure. I mean, I feel like I'm going to answer that question from an internal perspective and then an external perspective, because if we don't have our inside game right now. Jim Rohn says that the number one skill that a salesperson or any successful person needs to develop is the ability to stand guard at the door of our minds. And never has that been more important. I mean, I thought that May 10th of last year was going to be the revelry. We were going to have won if we made it to May 10th. And then June, July, things just kind of eroded and got worse. And then finally we got to the end of 2023 and we thought, finally, at least May 10th is 6 months late, but it's here and it got better and we saw rates improve. And now we're seeing another reversal with those rates going higher. And now you have the NAR thing and buyer's agent commission thing. And so the first thing that I would say is that I have learned how important the morning routine is, how important the ritual is in the morning to get space, to anchor into gratitude, to get the proper nutrition, hydration, workout routine, work on your business before you work in your business. And if that piece isn't tight, it's really hard to stand up to all these waves that seem to keep hitting us. You and I were on a webinar the other day, and we said that this, for the person with the right perspective, for the person who is intent on driving through this storm, not running away from it, this could be the greatest opportunity that mortgage originators have seen in decades, because there's more fear in the real estate, housing, and mortgage market than I can ever remember, between rates, inventory, affordability issues, the buyer agent thing. I mean, you name it. So that person that is able to have the constitution to stand tall and look for the opportunities through all of the fear really stands out from the herd. So that would be number one. Like, you've got to get your inside game right. As it relates to the exterior game, I believe that most realtors and perhaps most originators are underestimating the size of this seismic shift. I mentioned this to you the other day when we were on a webinar, but I think it bears repeating. The thing that I keep thinking about, and it might be an underestimate to say that I have 100 hours of talking, reading, and thinking about this buyer commission disruption thing, the NAR settlement. But the thing that I keep coming back to is that there's been a capital flow change. And when you see a capital flow change, that's when industries transform. Like this, they think about, when the US seized the $60 billion of Russian assets, which weren't all Russians, the Russian governments, by the way. Those were different businesses that were associated with Putin some way or another, and they seized this $60 billion. The oil that was going to the countries that exchanged in dollars all of a sudden didn't get that oil. that oil, instead of going west, started going east, and they started sending that oil to China, and they started exchanging oil for other currencies other than dollars. And it completely changed the oil markets because of the capital flow change. Instead of the oil chasing dollars, the oil was chasing I think you call it the renminbi, the Chinese currency. And I look at it similarly, what's happening in real estate commissions right now. You see the way that the dollar capital flow used to work in the real estate transaction that I've known for, it's been this way for at least the last 30 years, is that the money from the seller goes to the listing broker. And then there's a cooperative compensation agreement that shares a portion of that commission over to the buyer's brokerage. And then the listing broker and the buyer's broker pays their agents. But now that capital flow has changed. The seller's funds go to the listing brokerage. And then if there's going to be a concession that is paid to the buyer's agent, it goes to the buyer. And then the buyer uses those funds to either pay the buyer agent representation fee, or they use it to buy out the mortgage insurance, or they use it for a temporary buy down. But now the buyer has agency and control over those funds. It doesn't happen behind the curtain. And when there's a capital flow change like that, it tells me there's going to be huge changes in the industry that I think people are underestimating at this point.
It's interesting when you describe it that way. The first thing that comes to mind for me is that when that takes place, and I think it takes time, right, for the system to readjust itself. And we're not professing here this is going to happen, in early July.
Yep.
But over the course of time, what you just discussed, I mean, when you look at your example of the oil and what currency it's being paid in, the currency then dictates who is in power. I mean, this government, the U.S. government has been in power since World War II because essentially the world became denominated by the U.S. dollar at that point. And that has given us a massive strategic advantage over all other countries and allowed us to dictate the tempo of how the world is run. Now let's go back to the realtor thing. So if that 3% or 2.5% lands in the hands of essentially the buyer, now the buyer has much more control and much more power in the relationship with whoever is representing them than they have in the past, where they had no power.
Yes. And are there a segment of buyers? I was just literally having this conversation at lunch with one of the loan officers on my team. The W-2 buyer that works at a call center or has a retail job, and nothing wrong with those type professions, but they're not exposed to a lot of sophisticated business concepts, contracts, negotiations, third-party vendors, right? They're just not educated and sophisticated in those types of things. But how many people are self-employed who are very familiar with contracts, very familiar with negotiations, very familiar with negotiating and haggling back and forth and finding good reasons to negotiate one way or another? There's a good segment of the population who's going to say, I'll take that 2.5%. I may pay a paralegal $500 to write up the contract, and I'm going to take that other 2%. And instead of getting a 7% mortgage rate, I'm going to do a 1-1 buy down, and I'll take a 6% mortgage rate for the next 2 years till I can refinance. So there's a element of the society that is sophisticated enough that once they have agency over where those dollars go, I believe they're going to choose to spend them somewhere else. And if you go into Reddit, if you go into X and you search under the topics, buyers, agents, commissions, there's posts with thousands, tens of thousands of consumers saying, we've been railroaded, we've been taken advantage of, we've overpaid for years. And finally, there's some justice coming to this real estate system. So there's a lot of Americans who are pretty excited to have that agency back.
Okay, so let's play off of that for a second, because there have been a couple of things that have happened in my life recently that have had me do a lot of reflecting on the way that our society is set up from a perspective of bartering. I've traveled a lot, as have you, all over the world. I know that you've experienced this in other cultures. I know you lived in Thailand for a period of time. When you go to other cultures, the Middle East, India, Southeast Asia, it is actually not only customary to barter
Yes.
and to negotiate the fees and services that you're paying for. It's actually expected, and in some cases, they're offended if you don't. Like in Turkey, when I've been there, it's like if you don't negotiate, they're like upset with you because it's like a game. So it's like deeply ingrained into the societal fabric to negotiate. So lately, I've been just playing around with this concept in my own world here in the US. And I've been negotiating on some things, which I think that we've been reared as US citizens to think that in some way we're doing something wrong by trying to negotiate, like we're being offensive. And so check this out. So like I needed to get my house power washed. So I called my handyman and I'm like, hey, Tony, can you power wash my house? He's like, sure, no problem. Like, how much is it going to cost? He gets back to me, he says $1,700. I'm like, that seems like a lot of money, $1,700. So I called this company that I sometimes have come clean my windows because I have a lot of windows in my house and I'm too lazy to do it myself. They did it for $400.
Wow.
And that's a radical difference. We're talking 300% more that he quoted me. I also had a roof repaired that had a leak over my my master bathroom. The original quote that I got was 20 grand. I ended up getting it done for 8 grand to get the whole roof redone. Point being is this, is that I think that people assume in our society that things are not negotiable, but they are. And in this particular case, as it relates to something as substantial as $10, $20, $50,000 in commissions, there's a ton of room in there. We're not talking about like negotiating a $5 product here down to, $4.50. And we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars that are on the table that could be played with. And I think that buyers, to your Reddit point, are going to become more and more savvy, and they're going to realize that the money is flowing to them and they're in much more control now to negotiate the services. And to your point, I mean, that's where real estate agents are going to need to be ready. We talk about this all the time as friends that, there's those phases of grief, right? And denial is one of them. And I think that that's where a lot of realtors are at right now. And you and I have been talking to realtors a lot lately, and they're like, even in the Zoom call that you and I did together the other day, you probably didn't see this because you were teaching, but in the process of you teaching, there was a post that came up in the chat from someone who said, it's just going to be business as usual. And I remember thinking to myself, this guy doesn't get what's coming. I mean, this is not going to be business as usual. This is massive disruption that's happening here.
Well, think about it from this perspective. A buyer for at least the last 30 years, maybe longer, but that's when the cooperative compensation agreement went into effect, was in the mid 90s. A buyer has never seen a buyer agent commission compensation as an expense on the buyer side of the settlement statement. It always shows as an expense on the seller side of the settlement statement. Mm-hmm. And the psychology around loss mitigation, right? You're the psychological trauma or difficulty of losing $100 is at least 3 times as psychologically impactful as finding $100. In other words, if I find $100 today, I forget about it tomorrow. If I lose $100, I'm still pissed next Tuesday.
Yes.
And that's that psychological change. Whoa, I've got a debit on my settlement statement for $18,000. I'm never doing that again, right? I think the magnitude of that event hasn't transpired yet. But for those mortgage originators listening, remember 2010 when Dodd-Frank came in and all of a sudden we had to show, if you were a broker, you had to show your yield spread on the settlement statement. And all of a sudden, there was everybody who went through that period realizes that was the turning point, that mortgage origination got a lot more competitive. Now we got a break because rates were going down. And, when rates are going down, there's less shopping. But when there's more disclosure and those people are seeing those expenses, there's going to be margin compression. There's going to be people that are looking to figure out a cheaper way to transact.
Yeah. And back then, you did not have the availability of information and access to information that you do now, such as realtor.com. You can do a lot I don't mean to in any way minimize the role of a buyer's agent, because I happen to be somebody who thinks that their role is very, very important. I think that they're going to need to figure out how to substantiate the value associated with what you're paying for it. But the perception is what I'm talking about here. The perception is, I don't need them. And it's incumbent upon the real estate agent to have a presentation that shows why they need them. I'll give you an example of this that you'll find this to be true in about 4 days when we're together in La Jolla. So I've been looking at ways to cut the costs associated with our coaching program. And what a few people have suggested is to kind of trim down the services that we're providing as a part of being involved in Leadership 360. Like, can you get rid of Sarah, as an example? Like, what would it look like if you got rid of Sarah and you just had Andrea doing logistics? So, and how much would that save, in my coaching tuition? And I intuitively know how much those two women do. Like, I know it's a lot, but it was a healthy exercise for me. So I went to them and I said, do me a favor. I said, I need you guys to take the time. I need you to walk through a typical retreat and everything that leads up to it. And I need you to send me a spreadsheet of everything you do. Okay. Bro, it's incredible how much they do. And when I looked at it, I'm like, my God, they
got to be hundreds of steps.
It's so much.
Yeah.
It's way more than anybody realizes. And the reason I bring this up is because that's what you should be doing right now as a mortgage professional and partnering with a real estate agent, is saying to them, walk me through the entirety of a relationship that you have with a buyer from the very first time that they contact you. What are all of the steps, every single thing that you do, not just showing the property and negotiating the contract, but researching the school district for them, providing them with information on home warranty policies, providing, lining up the home inspector, helping them read the home inspection report, make sure that they understand it. I mean, it is a robust list. And I think it's going to be very important for a real estate agent to be able to present that and say, this is what you get when you work with me. So if I'm the buyer, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at the value of my time. And I'm going, shit, like, I think I need to pay you to do that because I don't have the time to do all of that for myself and do it right. But this is the true opportunity, bro. And I know that you agree with me, but, spitball back here with me on this. So like I love how originators like to throw around the term partnership. I mean, it's an overused term. It's used that my realtor partners are not loyal. Okay. All right. Slow this down for a minute. Let's first start with, what's the definition of partner? I mean, in my mind, a partner is somebody who brings equal or greater value to the relationship than they are getting in return. That's a true partner. And they're loyal and they think of the other person. And they're there to be a teammate. And you and I are partners, so I can say that about you. That's how I feel about you. It's why I love being partners with you. So right now is an opportunity to really show up for the first time as a partner and to say, we need to work on this together. You're not in this alone. I'm your lending arm. I'm your partner in this fight. Let's go to war together. Let's develop and co-create a fusion of presentations between mine and yours that has you kicking people over to me quickly, not showing them property until they talk to me so I can brag on you, so I can sell you. And it starts with you selling me. So they call me in the first place. And then I sell you. And before you know it, you're working with a team that admires each other and shows loyalty to each other, which is very attractive. What would you add and how would you elaborate on that?
Well, I said earlier that I think this is the greatest opportunity for mortgage originators in at least the last few decades because there's so many challenges out there to solve. But that same thing could be said for the really good buyer's agents out there, the really good agents at all, because there are, unfortunately or fortunately, depending which side of the fence you're on this, a lot of people who I don't think are going to make it through this shift. The probable real estate future to me looks like less commissions running through the system. Okay, how could that possibly be a huge opportunity? Well, it means a lot of people aren't going to make it. And it also means that those people that do make it are going to have to spend some time looking internally and saying exactly as you said, introspectively, this is my process. This process, my team, the way that I negotiate, my reputation, my contacts as it relates to home improvement or what have you, inspectors, what have you. This fortress that I have built around me to deliver the service that I do to my clients is so much better than anybody else's. I can clearly substantiate why I'm worth this amount. Or a realtor is going to look and go, gosh, I can't substantiate why I'm any better than anybody else. I'm going to move to the 495 model and just write up contracts. But I think if realtors take it from that same perspective that big problems equal big opportunities, that's how entrepreneurs look at problems, then those people will last and shine. And as everybody else flees the market, the business is going to pick back up. Rates are going to go down eventually. And when that business picks back up, those people are going to crush it. But they have to, as you said, go to work on building that value proposition. And I think maybe another thing that you and I should discuss, you alluded to it, is what would it look like if a buyer's agent didn't have, like listing agents have listing agent presentations, because they have to go ask for the listing and there's a fee associated with it. So they have to justify that value. Now, buyer's agents have to do that in some way. And LOs are doing that. Mortgage advisors are doing that. So what could it look like if instead of having two different parties trying to move the buyer forward and to communicate value, what if they came together and said, look, Tim, in the market that you're in as a buyer, here are the problems that you're going to experience. These problems make the process take more time. It's a total pain in the ass because of all the competition and the lack of inventory. And it's just really not a great buyer's experience right now. With that in mind, here's all the things that we do as a team to help you overcome those challenges and put you in a place where your offer is better than anybody else's offer. And we collapse the amount of time it takes you to get into a home, and we drastically reduce the amount of friction and pain. But what if the mortgage advisor and the realtor did that collaboratively?
Yeah, so I think that what you're describing here is something that we haven't talked about in a while, but we talked about when we were in Park City back in the fall of last year about this concept of like a concierge service, right? Like when you go to a great hotel, I mean, one of the great benefits of a great hotel isn't just the room, it's that concierge. Like you could go downstairs or call that concierge and say, what are the best restaurants? You know, who's the best tour guide? You know, what nightclub is the best nightclub that's the most happening, whatever the case may be. And they have the answers and they make the reservation and they make it happen for you. And people will pay, they will gladly swap money for their time. Now, here's the thing, is that everyone's value of their time is entirely based upon how much they earn. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you're a young couple and, you know, you have a dual income and you're making $100,000 a year and that equates to, you know, $25 an hour, then you're not going to value your time, rightfully so, as much as somebody who's making $300 an hour, you know, but if I look at all that I need to do to execute on a purchase transaction and I equate it to how much my time is worth, the more that person makes per hour, the less they're going to be willing to do it on their own, and the more they're going to be willing to pay for it and to focus on what they do best.
Yes.
But it's the realtor's job and the originator's job that's partnering with the realtor to highlight that. To say, to like literally, like what would that look like if there was somebody that was kind of on the fence and I'm role playing with you. And I'm like, you know, Josh, I see your income here and I don't know how many hours you work on a weekly basis. But if you're working, say, 50 hours a week, what I'm aware of is that your time's worth at least, you know, $150 an hour to you. And when I look at this list of all of the things that you would need to do on your own, not discounting the fact that time is money in this market, and you might not even get to write an offer because you're not quick enough to the punch, which a real estate agent can help you get into that property. I mean, they have access to pocket listings. They know something, they hear about things before they hit the market. So they're like ready and Johnny or Jane on the spot for you. I mean, but you got to highlight all this stuff up. Otherwise they're operating off of the headlines on CNN and Fox News, which basically say, you don't have to pay for this shit anymore. It's like,
Yes.
okay, I don't have to pay for this shit anymore, but what am I inheriting onto my plate in exchange for not having to pay for this shit anymore? Somebody has to highlight that for them.
And I think there's a sequence to this, because if a buyer's agent just starts telling me how great they are and all the things that they do, I could find myself perhaps tuning out just a little bit, because I feel like I'm getting pitched a little bit. But if there's a sequence to this where they say, Tim, what do you know about the local market? How much have you been following it? Okay, well, I did a little homework, and based on, kind of the overview of what you're looking for, there's currently 2 homes for sale that meet your description, and they'll both be under contract by 5 o'clock. So let me talk to you about a few of the challenges in the market, and you can tell me if this is what you've experienced as well, right? And then you talk about all the problems, all the obstacles, all the landmines, the things that this person's going to experience. At the end of that, they're like, shit, that's a daunting task. Like, is this even possible? Can I even sell my house and buy a new house? Now you got my attention. And then and that's why we've created this experience, this perfect purchase process that enables you to have every tool humanly possible to overcome that. We turn you into a cash buyer. We put you in a position where you can close in 2 weeks. We give you opportunities and information so you can waive appraisal. Like, whatever those things are, they have to, one, get the attention, and you're actually earning the attention of the buyer. Like, you don't just get the attention of the buyer to tell them how great you are. You have to earn that attention. And the best way to do that is to identify their problems. And then they go, oh, I'm over my skis here, but here's how I can help you.
Yeah, that's that Donald Miller. No.
Yeah, totally. You're right.
Donald Miller formula that you talk about. Maybe speak to that for a second.
Yeah. So Donald Miller has, first of all, he's a great teacher. He's written a book called Marketing Made Simple. He has a website that's Business Made Simple University, I believe. You can Google it. He wrote another book called Building a Story Brand. And he's just a really brilliant marketer. He's got a great business mind from an entrepreneur's standpoint. And, the number one things he says about an entrepreneur is you have to be a marketer. You have to be in charge of bringing in revenue to your company. And he says, if you want to have influence and if you want to get attention, he calls it his attention and influence process. He says, look, just do 4 things. And it doesn't matter if it's a text message, a billboard, a speech, your 30-second elevator pitch, whatever it is. People don't care about you. They care about how you can help them. So the 4-step sequence is talk about their problems, show empathy to their problems, how, tell a story, how I've experienced that, how I've seen a customer suffer because of it. So it's their problems, show empathy. Then you show that you have experience to solve that problem. If you start with your experience and showing them, here's all the things, here's the 100 things I can do to help you before they've figured out, oh, those things are going to help me overcome my problems. They're specifically related to me. It's not related to you, the agent. It's related to me and my problems, right? So it's got to be problem, empathy, and then he calls it authority, which is how he's educating them to help. And then the last is a call to action, right? So with that being said, as I see it, you have 2 paths. You can either go it alone, or we can decide to work together. Here's my buyer agency agreement. I'd love to apply for the job as your realtor. Sign here, right? Whatever that specific call to action is at the end.
Yeah, beautifully articulated. And what I'm offering for everybody that's listening here to consider as a loan originator, assuming that you are, is how can you be a part of that process? Like,
Yes.
What role can you play to support and add value to that process that Josh just walked you through? So one role that you can play for sure is to edify the real estate agent.
Yes.
And to be able to speak intelligently about the value that you've seen them bring when you've worked on transactions before. Another way is that you can help amplify that pain. You can talk to the issues that you've seen people run up against when, probably not when they're unrepresented because you haven't experienced that yet, although you will, and be on the lookout for how those deals go, because my hunch is they won't go as well.
Yeah.
But you have worked with buyers who have been represented by agents who just suck. Okay. And didn't represent them in a proactive and efficient way. And you can tell those stories about this is what I've seen before, Josh. And I'm not trying to steer you on what to do, but I just want to make sure that you're well informed so you can make an intelligent choice for you and your family as to what the best move is for you. I've seen buyers go through this process poorly represented, and the grief that they've experienced and the money that it's cost them, and losing out on an offer on a home that they really wanted because they didn't have a great agent representing them who maybe didn't respond to their text very quickly. And before you know it, somebody else got it, snuck in and got their offer accepted. I just want to make sure that you're considering all of the factors before you make your final decision, because what I know from doing this for a living is that real estate agents that represent buyers provide, if they're good, provide an unbelievable amount of value. Now, what that value is worth to you, you need to determine. And these types of things. Now, just think about this for a minute. If you're a real estate agent, and I'm the loan professional that's having this conversation with you and saying, these are the types of things that I would like to say, but I think it's really important that you get all of your buyers to me as quickly as possible, because if this isn't being said to them, you're exposed, and I want to limit the exposure and help substantiate the value. That's a pretty intriguing conversation to be having with a real estate agent. I think a real estate agent, you're going to have their attention. They're going to be like, yeah, I need a partner right now. I need help. I need somebody who's going to be an ally and be on my team and say things about me that I can't say about myself. So I want to pivot back to something that you brought up earlier. And I want to read you a quote, stealing a little bit of my own thunder here. You're going to see this and many other quotes in the presentation that I do in La Jolla here next week. And it's a quote from, now we're going back to how you start your day. And it ties into this notion of the real estate agent relationship. It's a quote from the famous psychologist of the early 20th century, Carl Jung. And he said, as far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. I think there's a lot of darkness right now.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of darkness for loan originators because rates are high. I think there's a ton of darkness for realtors, and it's going to be, it's twilight right now. It's going to get darker for them.
Yep.
Okay. And what if you were the person who was the light in that darkness, who provided the optimism, the solutions, the collaboration that they need right now, and for yourself? So speak a little bit more about the struggles that you see originators going through right now psychologically, and what are some of the solutions that can help them turn the light on to have a little bit more of a appropriate mental framework around the tackling of these challenging times.
Well, let me dive into just a quick synopsis of the presentation that I did for the Modern Mortgage Summit, which was the 5 traits of the millionaire mortgage professional. And these were traits that I learned after 2010. I had at 29 years old, I had a 7-figure gross commission income year. At 31, this would have been 2010. The Great Recession hit Utah very late. We thought we were going to sail on through this thing. And so in 2010, I think it was, we closed like 336 loans, 300 and something like that, almost 340 loans, myself and one assistant. And then go to January, the end of January, the next year, I looked down on my pipeline and there were 2 loans. I was in massive trouble, man. Like I was hurling towards massive numbers of foreclosures, disappointing family, friends, people who had trusted me, banks that had loaned me millions of dollars. And there was no evidence of success around me. Like I didn't know a single builder, investor, or realtor that was head up doing fine. Everybody was losing properties that I knew. I didn't know one single success story around me at that moment. And I made a decision at that time that I had no clue how I was going to get out of this thing, and I needed help. I ended up, spending $7,000 to pay for a full year's worth of coaching, one-on-one coaching. I did it up front because I thought I was going to run out of money and end up in bankruptcy. And I'm like, I better at least prepay for my coaching. And over that next year's period, I ended up stumbling upon, discovering with the help of my coach, these 5 traits of the millionaire mortgage professional. And I've seen them over the last 14 years now, not only impact my life, but I've seen the originators on my team who have become, some of them incredibly wealthy, not only from a monetary standpoint, but from a family standpoint, from a personal hobbies standpoint. I mean, these are really well-rounded, amazing ladies and men that have embodied and kind of mirrored some of these traits. And, so I'll just kind of go through them real quickly. The first trait is that I put in that presentation was the moon is our sunrise. And what I figured out was that the mortgage world is incredibly chaotic. There's always something going on. Alerts to lock, appraisals low, cracks in the foundation, realtor going Karen on you. Like there's just always distraction. It is a very reactive business. And most originators get stuck on the hamster wheel, just running as fast as they possibly can. And then at the end of the day, they're like, what did I accomplish? I responded to a lot of emails. We got through the cracks in the foundation, but my business at the year end is really no better than it was at the beginning of the year. And I realized that if I woke up before the sunrise, when the moon was my sunrise, that there was peace, there was solace, there was stillness. I was at cause versus at being effect. And when I started my day that way, I realized, okay, now I have time for contemplation. Now I have time for meditation. Now I have time to read. Now I have time to think. Like you need space. You have to be bored to have the space to really think deeply. And then I could start to work on my business instead of in my business, which is a Michael Gerber-ism. And that was trait number 2. The millionaire mortgage professional works on their business before they work in their business, because when they're done working in their business, they are freaking exhausted. They got nothing else in them. At least I didn't. I couldn't do it. And then I had kid duty, right? And then I wanted to hang out with my wife for a minute. So, you got to wake up early if you want to change your life, in my opinion. You have to work on your business before you work in your business if you want to change your life, in my opinion. I'll pause there for a sec because I bet you're going to have something to add before I go on to the rest.
I almost don't want to interrupt your flow. I do have quite a bit to add on that first part, but let me circle back to that. Keep going. What's number 3?
All right. So number 3 is you have to win by noon. You have to really control those hours between whatever your wake up time was. For me, in the wake of 2010, Tim, I was waking up at 1:30 in the morning. I did that for 4 years, from 2010 to the end of 2010 through the middle of 2014, until I'd rebuilt my business and I ended up paying off my home, and I had 4 years worth of savings of spending saved away. I woke up at 1:30 in the morning. And what I realized was we all have 24 hours in the day. Let's say we sleep for 8. So that gives us 16 hours of potential productivity time. But those 16 hours of productivity time are not equally weighted. In other words, the first 8 hours I figured out was 10 times as valuable as the second 8 hours. So that means I wanted to have dominion, control, and I wanted those first 8 hours to be carefully scripted. Like I said, morning routine, working on your business before you work in your business, workout, breakfast with the family. We do a gratitude meeting at 8:15 every morning, which we've done now for 14 years consecutively. And every morning at 8:15. And then we'd roll into prospecting from 8:30 a.m. until 12:30, 4 hours of prospecting. And the intentionality is no interruptions. Like the phones are forwarded. You're in your outbox versus your inbox. You've got past clients to call. You've got referrals partners to call. You've got leads to call. We could be calling listing agents and asking them why their awesome home hasn't sold. It's been on the market for 4 months. Maybe it's the payment, and maybe I could help you with a buy down strategy. Like there are a lot of people to call. And what I found out is that if I controlled those first 8 hours of the day, I could really kind of dick off the rest of the day. Like I didn't have to be, Jocko said it, discipline equals freedom, right? I had incredible discipline for the first 8 hours of the day so that I didn't have to have that kind of crazy discipline for the rest of the day. So that was a really big piece to me. And then, the last thing I'll say, just to kind of wrap this up, is I realized that the millionaire mortgage professional, the people that I recognize in the mortgage industry that have really financially gotten to that next level, they pay themselves first. There's a very simple equation for scarcity, and there's a very simple equation for financial abundance. And the financial scarcity equation is income minus spending equals savings. What I have left, I save. And whatever's the last in your priority list is the thing that flourishes the least. And the formula for financial abundance is simple as well. It's income minus your savings equals what you can spend. And so I've just noticed that the people around me that have really excelled, the people that I meet at these conferences, the people that are up on the stage, they all have a very similar formula to them, right? They have their focus time. They work on their business. They have incredible time integrity. They're winning by noon. They're paying themselves first. They have a discipline or a control over their life. So they're just not constantly being blown left and right without a rudder.
So the interesting thing is that this stuff that you're talking about winning the day, as it begins, is a formula that I believe transcends culture and transcends time. First of all, I have read, the only kind of books that I read, other than when you send me a chapter from a book that you tell me is going to take 15 minutes to read and it takes me 45.
Salesmanship.
The only kind of books that I really enjoy reading personally are spirituality books. It's what I've always been drawn to. And so I've read so many books now over the years of this formula. And the formula is that the 4 a.m. wake up it transcends culture. So, whether it be yogis in the Himalayas of India or, Catholic or, Franciscan monks, they all wake up at that 4 a.m. window before the sun rises. Okay. And they all do the same thing. They connect with God, they contemplate, they research. And I used to have this man in my life. He's still in my life, but not as intimately as he once was, who is a yogi from India, who I met when I was there. And when I say he's in my life, he came 3 times and stayed at my house with me for a month, 3 different times. So, wow. I lived with him for extended periods of time. And he told me one day, he said, Tim G, which is what he used to call me. It's a term of endearment from the Indian culture. He said, you wake up at 4. The first 4 hours is for contemplation and prayer. Then you work from 8 to 4. This is when you are productive and you make money for your family. And then you stop and you are with your family, and then you go to bed at 8. And it was just like this simple formula, do that every day. And it's interesting because at that time, it didn't resonate with me as much as it does now. You'd be proud of me. I was up at 4:15 this morning. That's monumental for me. I'm usually not up that
Incredible.
Early. But you really have had a huge impact on me in that regard, by the way. I remember I used to think of you and I'd be like, that dude doesn't have a very fun life. He's always in bed by 7:30. And if I asked him if he watched the ball game last night, he didn't, because he was sleeping already in the second inning or when does he have any time to just binge watch a show on Netflix or a documentary or whatever? And then I start hanging out with you and I realize you actually do have a very fun life and you like to party and have a good time. It's just that you're very selective as to when you and Hillary do it. But we've had some great times together.
Yeah.
But there's so much wisdom, and I thank you for really helping me see it. I'm usually in bed now 8:30, at the latest 9 o'clock. I'm up by 5. I've got that long window, that 4-hour window. And that word that you said, think, that's the same thing as what this man shared with me as contemplate. That is precious time before the world starts coming at you, where you can just sit and be and think through what you want to accomplish today. You can be in a creative state. You can preemptively solve challenges that may be coming that day in an unemotional state with a settled nervous system. And yeah, I mean, and if nothing else, and I know we've talked about this too, it's like, what's one thing that you're going to do before your day gets going that'll move the needle? So you can look back on your day with gratitude and say, you know what, I got that accomplished today and I'm really proud of myself. And that really gives you momentum.
Tim, can I say one more thing
Yeah,
about
please.
that?
No, please.
Normally, many times when I talk to people about this, the response to them is, man, I wish I could do that. I wish I could go to bed at that time. I wish I could wake up early. And I want people to question that statement or whatever consideration might have been coming up for you when I was discussing my morning routine or Tim was discussing his Timby?
Tim G.
Tim G. When Tim G was discussing his morning team, my intuition is there was probably some sort of excuse or narrative that ran through your head as to why you can't do that. And this is, I've thought about this. I've thought about this a lot. Like, how do you get somebody to change their behavior? And I've thought, the thing is if you wake up at 4:00 in the morning and you pray, you meditate, you take care of your body, you hydrate, you take your vitamins, you work on your business before you work in your business, you create a routine that enables you to stand guard at the door of your mind. So you're looking at the great things in life instead of all the things going wrong in life. You get to work early, you get your workout in. Like if you do that for a decade, you won't even recognize your life. You'll be like, who was that chick? Who was that dude? Back in 2014, just a totally different human being. And my guess is you'll be multiple magnitudes more wealthy, multiple magnitudes more successful, multiple magnitudes happier. Your relationships will be better. But the problem is that you have to put in the changes of behavior and the sacrifices well before the payoff happens. The payoff doesn't happen. You may get your first real win 60 or 90 days in. Like, wow, I am showing up so much better than I used to show up. You may not recognize these massive tidal shifts in your life it really for 5 or 10 years. And here's the funny thing. If you gave somebody $10 million and you said, hey, I'll give you $10 million today, and everything gets up-leveled in your life. Your fitness, your relationships, your health, your enjoyment, everything gets up-leveled. I'll give it to you today, and then all you have to do is change your routines for the next 10 years. I bet you most people would do that if they got the payoff before they had to put in the work. But people don't realize or they don't think they can actually successfully execute on these changes long enough to get the results. So I think that people, I don't know how to really, I guess this is a question for you. If I could give somebody the payoff before they change their behavior, I think they would do it. But how do you get somebody to change their behavior before they get the payoff? That's the real secret.
I think that it's a great question. I don't have a magical answer for it, but I think that you have to fall in love with the process, right? I mean,
it's good.
You have to enjoy the journey and not be so fixated on the destination. So let's take working out, which I know you used to work in a gym, right? And you used to be a personal trainer. So like there's that pain that happens for the first 30 days of working out. Like when I first met Liz, she had never really worked out in her life. Like she'd done a lot of like hiking and rock climbing and skiing and horseback riding, but not like gym workout. And she was wanting to get into better shape. And I remember her going through, Liz is my wife, for those that don't know, and I remember going through those first few weeks of pain, and it sucked because it's like, you're not seeing any results.
Right.
You just feel sore and you're fatigued and nobody's telling you look better. Okay. And you're having to do something that isn't having any payoff at all. It's the same thing with, with meditation. I mean, I know that a lot of people have a difficult, people think I'm a nut job that I'll sit for an hour and 15 minutes and meditate, and you will as well, longer even, because we went to Dr. Joe together. But I mean, like, I have done it for long enough now to where I notice the difference.
Yes.
Like I noticed the difference in my day, but it took me making the commitment to trusting the process and then falling in love with the process of working out. Or, because as soon as you get back to the workout thing, I mean, as soon as you get that first attaboy, as soon as somebody goes, hey man, your arms look bigger, or hey, you look like you've lost some weight. That's all you needed.
Right.
That's it. Now you're addicted. Now you're
a little
addicted.
win.
Yeah, you're addicted, or you lift a little bit more weight, or you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, oh man, my abs are a bit more ripped now. That's all you needed. And now like you're addicted to the process. But it's the question becomes, how can you fall in love with the process when there's pain and no gain? I think that's a really, I don't have the magic answer, but I think the answer is trusting the process.
I think that's a great answer. And, Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote a book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And his whole argument is, or his whole thesis is that the convenience or lack thereof of your environment is more indicative of your success than your willpower and determination. In other words, if you want to get somebody that isn't in a routine of working out, you can, really get a lot of determination, or you take another person and you just set up their environment. All right, the phone alarm isn't by my bed anymore. It's on the nightstand across the room. The coffee goes off 30 minutes before my alarm so that when I wake up, I smell the coffee. My gym clothes and my shoes are on the side of my bed, and my pre-workout drink is already in powder form on the cabinet, and all I got to do is put water in it. So it's almost like you're waking up and you've created an environment where it's a downhill battle. And that's a little bit more enjoyable, right? If the coffee's brewed, you already have your homemade protein bars, your favorite hoodie is right next to your bed, you start to enjoy that process versus everything being uphill. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you said.
You make your own protein bars?
I do.
What do you tell me the recipe? I want to hear it.
So good. All right. So you start with, I don't know the exact proportions, but I'll tell you the ingredients. So it's coconut oil, which, is kind of like a firm substance.
Mm-hmm.
You heat that with some almond butter.
Mm-hmm.
And now I use like mixed nut butters as well. So that's the warm ingredients. Those sizzle on simmer on low as I'm putting the rest of the ingredients in. I have coconut flakes, almond flakes, chia seeds, and then I have a 7-nut mixed nut seed blend, and it has like pumpkin seeds and a bunch of other seeds in it. And actually, they rotate through seeds throughout the year, which is good for your gut. So then you take those, and then I have a couple of scoops of protein that I stick in there. I blend all the dry ingredients together. Then you pour the warm ingredients once they're kind of melted down a little bit over the top. You mix the whole thing together. You throw it in the freezer, and I've got 2 weeks of homemade protein bars.
Yeah, because you probably have to freeze it because it's super gooey and sticky, I would imagine, based on what you described.
If you don't eat it fast enough, like if I get distracted, I come back and it's just like a lump of melted butter on.
You can't put that on the counter in Costa Rica for 5 minutes without it. Getting soft.
Yeah.
Well, back to the pain and no gain thing too. Like I think that there's a worthy exploration there about how, people will run away from pain much faster than they will run towards pleasure. Or another way of saying that is you have like people will respond more to the stick than the carrot in many cases. I think that's a part of just human nature. I mean, may even just be a part of nature in general. It certainly is with a dog as an example, right? And maybe all of us are just intelligent dogs anyway, at the end of the day. So like, how can you build mechanisms? Like I'm a big fan of the concept of using fear as your friend. So like if you're one who responds to fear, which is most of us, or unpleasant experiences, how do you juxtapose that and use it as a catalyst? So as an example, this is why accountability partners work so well. And this is why a little side wager can work really well. Mm-hmm. So like in my podcast episode with Gallegos, he talked about, best I can recall, he has this buddy on the East Coast, and they made a commitment that they would I laughed because he made this sound like it was some gigantic sacrifice that they wouldn't have any more than, I believe it was 14 drinks a week. And I was like, that's actually a lot, dude. I mean, just so you know, you're on the verge of alcoholism. But I think that was the number. It was like 12 or 14 a week. But the bet was the key thing, right? So it was like, I think it was if, and they're good buddies, so they're going to be honest with each other. So it's like, we check in every Sunday night, and if you eclipse that number of 12 or 14, whatever it is, you have to donate like $1,000
Wow.
to the political party that you despise.
Oh.
Okay. So like if you're a hardcore Democrat, let's say, then you would have to donate it to the Trump Foundation. Okay. Or vice versa to the Biden Foundation if you're a hardcore Republican. And I love that. I love that because what we're doing is we're playing with human nature here a little bit. So how can you leverage the subject matter of pain or fear to be a catalyst to growth and taking action? And I think that that's something worth considering too. So what wager could you make, not that I'm offering, that you will not wake up after 4 a.m.? I'm not offering that, to be really clear. Like I'm not quite there yet, but I'm more around the 5 a.m. range. Okay, but like those, can you play a game with yourself or with your friends? Another great example is so you obviously know, maybe the listeners probably don't, but the whole analogy that I like to use when I teach time management about teams and how they drive each other off the freeway. And what that is, somebody interrupts your day, like on your team, like they pick up the phone and they buzz you, or they send you an email that they didn't need to send because you have a meeting later that day, or they text you, or they just come barging into your office and say, hey, did we get that appraisal in yet? And so Shane Day, I don't know if you know Shane. Did you ever meet him?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But Shane did a really brilliant thing with his team. They made a commitment to have sacred hours, 2 different 1-hour blocks a day, say from 10 to 11 and from 2 to 3 every day, where nobody could interrupt a teammate during those 2 sacred 1 hours. And if somebody did, that person would have to go out in the lobby and there was a fishbowl out there and you'd have to put $5 in the fishbowl. Okay. And as that fishbowl accumulated, then they would all go to happy hour and have drinks and have a good time, which they made it a fun game, but it made it painful to have to go put money in there and to be embarrassed and have people razz you and say that you broke the rules and all that kind of stuff. And it really helped keep them accountable. So I love these kinds of games too, to help people in those types of situations.
These are all environmental hacks versus determination or discipline hacks, willpower hacks. We had a similar practice where when the originators would go into 4 hours of prospecting on my team, there was a period where we had a blackout period for operations too. Like, hey, that not only do the originators get 4 hours of prospecting, but the processors and the ops team, there's no messaging them. And they didn't have a 4-hour blackout. It was like it was the first 2 hours of that day blackout. But it's a very successful practice. And I think the more things you can think of creatively to get your environment on your side, and then it becomes more enjoyable, and you get a few wins, as you alluded to. And then all of a sudden, what was difficult in the beginning, you have to really manipulate the environment early, because it's not fun to feel sore. It's not fun to wake up early when your body's not used to it. But once you get a few wins, then you really enjoy that journey.
Let's go. I don't want to skip over something you mentioned earlier, and I witnessed it one time many years ago now. I jumped on a call with you guys at like 8:15 because you wanted me to, I don't know, do a little coaching to your team or whatever. And you guys started it off with your 8:15 gratitude. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think that that's really interesting.
So I learned this from Coach Bill Hart. He was coaching a realtor team out of Arizona, and they were a massively productive real estate team. And he just mentioned that they did a gratitude call every morning. And oh man, now that I think about this, so this was an interesting time. I was really struggling with my company at the time, the company that I was originating with. And I was really finding myself angry a lot. I remember going to a yoga class and just being aware how incredibly enraged I was. And I was like, dude, why are you so enraged? Like, well, get it under control, calm down. And I was finding myself in these experiences where I was aware that I was out of control from a rage perspective. Like there was no gratitude in me. I was just pissed. And so I started playing with the idea. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change my email signature so it says grateful at the bottom. The last thing in the world that I'm feeling is grateful right now, but that's what I'm going to do. And then this was right around the time that Coach Bill mentioned that he had this lady had her team doing a gratitude call. I'm like, we're going to do a gratitude call every morning. Like, I'm just going to fake it until I make it because I don't know how else to change my behavior and my energy right now. And it was really it was a really interesting shift. I became grateful. Every time somebody emailed me back, I looked at my email signature and it said grateful at the bottom. And I was like, well, I kind of got to be that guy now. And then every morning we started our meeting off, our day off with a gratitude. And I'd come into that meeting like, I am not grateful for shit. And then you'd hear 3 or 4 people say something they're grateful for. Like, okay, I'm grateful for my daughter too. Right. And I just had to make myself be grateful and pivot off of being an angry SOB. And I wanted to be grateful. I just wasn't, but I faked it. And we just practiced gratitude until I became grateful. And so now this has been 14 years. I mean, let's see, 52 weeks a year times 5 days a week. That's 260 times 14 years. You know, we're like 3,640 gratitude sessions in this team. It's pretty incredible. We used to all do it in person. We'd all be in the kind of boiler room, and we'd have a big circle around the boiler room. We'd go around. It only takes like 15 minutes, right? What's one thing you're grateful for, and what's the one thing you're going to accomplish today that you just, like the most important thing you have to nail. If you do this thing today, it's going to be a success. And it takes usually about 15 minutes. So we're done by 8:30. Every once in a while, we go a little bit later. But, I know every single one of my teammates' kids' lives. Like I have lived the experience of my entire team's children's lives through their parents, their moms and dads coming to gratitude meeting, telling us about their softball games, telling us about, Drake yesterday said, his youngest, Garrett. It's Garrett. No, Garrett, Brooks, Charlie, Party Charlie. Him and Charlie went on a moped ride, and Charlie loves flowers, and they picked flowers, and they just had a beautiful afternoon together. How the hell would I have known that about him? So the depth of my relationship with him and with his kids and what he's experiencing is so insanely deep after 3,640 gratitude meetings together. So it's really been rewarding that way because we're incredibly tight. And it's also been rewarding because there's a lot of days where you come in and you're in just a little bit of a funk, and you hear 2 or 3 people talk about what they're grateful for, and it just completely changes your outlook on the day.
I was gonna say, wow, before you shared that, I was gonna say, wow, you must know your teammates on a very intimate level, which is a secondary, hugely beautiful benefit. But what I would add is that, having become your friend for quite a many years now, I mean, we've been friends for about 5-6 years. I rarely see you in a bad mood. Like you're solid, man. Like you're up and vibrating high most of the time. I mean, I've seen you pissed off a couple of times, but it is very infrequent. And now I understand why. I'm really glad that I circled back to that because I think this was a very powerful thing for everybody to hear. And I also love how, what's the one, how do you say it? What's the one thing that you want to accomplish today? Or
yeah, like the one thing that you have the most amount of intention on, like what if you accomplish this thing today, the day would be a win. What is that thing? Set that intention.
Great. So one of the takeaways, I mean, how deeply rich the content is at Dr. Joe's retreats. I mean, it's a lot, and it's amazing content. And one of the big takeaways I had from this last retreat that I did in San Diego was, and I've been doing a pretty good job of it, although I've slipped a little, was he talked in depth about the importance of ending your day and starting your day with intention. We talk a lot about a morning routine, but there's not as much talk about an evening routine. And he did a really beautiful job. I mean, how articulate, what a great teacher is. So Well, basically what he said was this, is that like, how can you expect to change, whether it be as a human being or as a business person, all of the above, if you don't take pause and take a moment to set an intention? He didn't use the word intention, but I'll use that word, of what you want to accomplish today. So the way that he actually says is a little bit different, which is, who do you want to be today?
Yeah.
Okay, who do you want to be? So starting the day by asking, who do I want to be today? And then rehearsing it in your mind for a moment. So like yesterday, because I had a really crazy packed schedule, I was like, man, I want to be calm today. Like I want to show up as calmness. No matter what happens, I want my nervous system to be settled. And I had my eyes closed and I rehearsed being calm, and I could feel myself being calm. Okay. And then it's part of my morning routine. And then I went about my day. But then the key piece is to do a review at the end of the day. So when you go to bed last night, I was like, how did I do with being calm today? Not from a perspective of pass, fail, D minus, C plus, none of that shit. Just like, how did I do? Like curiously taking, oh man, I could see where I got tripped up there. Yeah, I did really great there. Like, I'm really proud of myself. So you can, I mean, like when you think about it, it makes so much sense. Like, how could you expect to evolve and improve as a human being or as a business person if you're not at least establishing what your goal is for that day, and then reflecting back on it and doing a debrief on what that day was like and where did you get tripped up and where do you want to improve?
So I don't know if you know this about me, but I was raised, and my mom is still very active in the Scientology religion. Did we ever talk about that?
I don't think so, because I would have remembered that for sure.
Yeah, my mom actually was the right hand to L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology,
Really?
for years. Said she floated around. He has a flotilla of boats that he would do services around the world, Madrid. She actually was the one who, I think she calls it, commandeered the LA org, the big blue buildings in LA.
Mm-hmm.
She actually did the deal to buy those, negotiated the deal to buy it, and then she was in charge of the renovations. And then she also bought the land that Flag was built on in Clearwater. And she was L. Ron Hubbard's, LRH's right hand for many years. And one of the real blessings about the Scientology religion, and there's a lot of like weird, Esquire magazines or whatever the tabloid names are about things about Scientology, and there's weird things about all religions, but the core of Scientology is very similar to Buddhism. They believe in karma. They believe in, energy. They believe in reincarnation. But one of the things that Scientology ingrained in me in a very young age was that we are at cause in our environment, that we are an operating, what they call Thetan, but that just means a spiritual being, and that we are not at effect in this world. We get to choose what we engage in, what we do, and everything we create around us, good, bad, or indifferent. And I share that with you because, Dr. Joe's philosophies remind me a lot of what I learned in Scientology, that there are traps and there is a veil that we have the ability to see through and change with intention, with greater awareness. Joe's methodology for achieving that enlightenment is a little bit different. Scientology calls it auditing. Joe calls it meditation. But at the end of the day, you are trying to up level or be bigger than who you are stuck in this physical body. And I think that is a thing that maybe, all people don't realize. Like, you're just not the way you are forever. Like the person I was born as, the person I was in high school, the person I was in 2010 is not even it's not even the same human that I am in 2024. And all of us have that ability. We just have to slow down. We have to think. We have to become aware of the things that we are doing that is behooving us and the things that aren't serving us. We have to then make intention to change those things. And like you said, Dr. Joe's just setting those guardrails up. Like, okay, where do you want to go? who do you want to be? You've got to change that routine of who you were, divorce the past, marry the future. And he tells you in the morning and in the night, in which he has great morning and night meditation routines. Where are you going to go tomorrow? Who are you becoming? Fall in love with that person. Keep doing those things and you will change. And I think that's why Joe really resonates with me, because it all kind of makes sense to me. It doesn't seem crazy. I've seen it work in my life.
And for anybody who doesn't know who the hell we're talking about, his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. We're talking about,
they're like, we got to meet this guy. Is he on the faculty?
Let's actually, speaking of that, let's wrap up with that. Tell me about, how's things going for you with being a big, part of the Loan Atlas? It's an honor to have you as a partner and a fellow teacher and faculty member, but I'm curious as to, I've never asked you this question. How's it going? How are you enjoying it? Is it fun for you? Where are you at with it all?
Totally. Yeah. I'm going to tie this back just a little bit. One of the awarenesses I had in 2014 after waking up at 1:30 in the morning for 4 years is that I was really tired for working for money. And I just had made a really clear intention that I'm never going to go back to that space like I experienced in 2010, where I had that major loss and fear. And then I had to spend 4 years almost killing myself. Working 12 to 16-hour days was just standard for 4 years. And I got really interested in figuring out how to make money work for me so that I didn't have to go to work to make money. To make money, or I wasn't working for money, that money was working for me. And so, by the end of 2020 and 2021, we'd acquired enough properties that, I didn't need to work for money anymore. My money was working for me. And as Robert Kiyosaki said, I had escaped the rat race. And at that minute, at that time, I really had an opportunity to sit back and go okay, what do I want to do now? I've let go of the title of the number one loan officer in my team or my company or whatever. That ship sailed. I did that. That was fun and exhausting. What do I want to do now? And what I really enjoyed at that point was I looked at the Drakes, the Mike Jones, the Katrinkas, the Ross Zimmermans, the other people that have been with me, the Davids, the Matts, the folks that have been with me. I know I'm forgetting somebody, so I'm sorry.
Aaron Thomas.
Yeah, sure. Aaron's such a blast. We haven't been together long enough for me to really see decades, but most of the people on my team, I've got, 10 to 14 year relationships with these people. I've seen them just massively change, right? From partnering up in 2010 at the verge of bankruptcy to them having multiple 7-figure net worths and beautiful families and lives. And I realized to the extent that I can pour into that really excites me. I dig it. It is just genius zone stuff for me. So the other thing that I realized is that with this on time, instead of working in your business, but on your business, I realized that I'm more creative than I ever thought that I was. I thought that the old me was just the hardest working person around. I would wake up at 1:30 in the morning. I would work till 6:30. I would have 2 hours to myself and Hillary, and I would go to bed and work another 16-hour day. And I would just outwork your ass. And I got tired of that person. I don't like that anymore. And I found when I started creating space for myself, I found this real creative part of me where I like to create presentations. I can create a storyline or arc to get somebody from not understanding to understanding. And I started to like that. And I like to pour into people and see their lives improve. And so when I got a chance to do that inside of Tribe, although I was very heavily married to some other projects, but inside of Loan Atlas, I've been able to create a little bit more space. So I've been able to really give time to think and to pour into this, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm loving it. I don't know that I'm getting better at it. I wouldn't say that I'm great at it yet, but I'm having fun. I'm learning. I think I can get a lot better. And I will say that the people in Loan Atlas are my tribe. They are my people. I love them. Just this morning, we were on a faculty meeting, and I just I had this huge shit-eating grin on my face, like so good. I was looking at all my pals, all my buddies were on this call. I'm like, this is rad. So the team and the faculty that you have put together in Loan Atlas is spectacular, and I'm loving it, man.
That's I'm happy for you, first of all. You're a terrific teacher. You're highly creative. Like, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about us getting to know each other on this level of being partners, is that seeing your creative side. I think you know that about me. Like, I mean, at my best, I'm a creator. Like, that's what I've loved so much about Leadership 360 is creating an experience for people. I mean, that's when I am having my most fun. So I really love that that's what you're getting to experience in this endeavor. And may it be that we kind of hold each other accountable to making sure we stay and play in that space a lot. Because I think that the beauty of being creative is that if your intention is a good intention, which I believe you and I both have good intentions, which is the really nice thing, is you can really help a lot of people by utilizing your creativity to benefit others, which gives purpose to your work. There are people that are creative in a self-serving way, and I don't think that they get the same amount of fulfillment. So thank you so much for joining me and spending time with me and having this conversation together. I'm really glad that I had you back, and there'll be another one for sure. And thanks for all the great work that you're doing for a lot of people right now, bro.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. Love you so much. And I'm super grateful for all that you poured into my life, my family's life. So thank you.
Love you too, man. And see you in a few days when we're together in La Jolla.
Cannot wait. See you then.
Me too, bro.